And so there is this great beauty, and it is you. There is this great beauty, and it is who you are. It is so easy to see beauty outside, but the truth is that whatever that is seen that is beautiful, whatever is seen that brings you alive with its beauty, whatever is seen that brings your heart to openness, that beauty is you. It is imagined to be out there, but the beauty is in you. The beauty is you. It is the fabric that you are. It is the same with love. It is so easy to love things and people and to imagine that love is out there. But the only reason love is felt is because love is who you are. You see, when you close your eyes, is the beauty still here? Is the love still here? Yes, it is here because it is who you are. It is known because it is the knowing of yourself, recognizing. We just did not learn to recognize our own reflection, right? The learned habit is to separate and to see that out there as away from us. But that seems to be out there is really in here, right? Every being is living in their own world of perception, we could say. Every being is living in their own conscious perception. And so too, what we resist is just resisting the self, resisting your own being. All resistance, all story that is resisting, all doubt, all fears. It's all resistance of your very own self, of your very own being. And this is why, as the aware being, we want to watch so carefully the thoughts that come and go, and not to believe them, not to engage in the thoughts that are fleeting. As soon as we identify with the thoughts that are fleeting, then we are away from the self, believing the thoughts that are transient and temporary, identified with the temporary, transient, and away from the deep knowing of the self. Everything that is longed for is right here. Everything that is longed for, you already are, right? The being has never not been. The self has never not been itself. It is this moment, here now, the simplicity of this moment, the simplicity of this moment just as it is, the felt sense of being here now. It is so incredibly simple to be with yourself, and yet it is not easy to come to the depth of simplicity where we pull all of those projections into the seeming external, back so deeply into the felt sense of presence, that presence is all that's here. When presence is all that's here, the knowing is this is your own presence. This is who you are. This is your true nature. And this is not an abstract or an out there experience. It is the knowing of yourself just as you are that is confirmed in your own direct experience of simply being. The direct experience of your own presence. The direct experience of simply being here now. That it can be confirmed is everything. That it can be confirmed in direct experience of simply being is everything. It is confirmed without thought. And what can be confirmed without thought is yourself. That you are resting in the felt sense of simply being. This is already known. What is speaking is not speaking anything new. What is speaking is the same as what is listening. What is speaking to itself. It is confirming and bringing forth a remembering of what has always been here. It is not inventing a new experience. It is not about becoming. It is not something to be gained in the future. It is the simple remembering of what you have always been, of who you have always been, coming to remember the essence nature that is pure and simple and holy. Coming to remember who you have always been before the first thought and before the whole story of my life. It is this remembering what has always been the same, what has never changed, what is not temporary and transient, what is constant and stable and consistent. So this moment, just as it is, the stillness, the simplicity, it is always the same. The silent presence, the aware being, always the same, never ever changes. There is nothing to do. There is nothing to get. The journey is very simple. It is from here to here, into yourself, into the felt sense of simply being. And this felt sense of simply being is the open aperture, the open portal into your own consciousness, opening to your own resonance of consciousness. So as these words come, they are not coming from out there or out here. They are coming from in here now. The words are in here now. The words are not out there. They never have been, and they could not be. This is the voice, we could say, of silence. It is not about the words, and it is not about understanding. It is about recognizing that these words are in you, that this resonance is you. This resonance is the known recognition of simply being yourself. So there is nothing to do, there is nothing to understand. It is just to be here so fully in this moment. It is to be carried into yourself, by yourself. What could be more simple than to just be here? Of course, there are so many habitual patterns that can pull the attention, but that too does not even matter. Whatever is coming and going is coming and going. We are not here to try to change the comings and goings and to make them better or different. We are here just to recognize that what comes goes, and there will be a continual ebbing and flowing of comings and goings, of movements and experiences, but that the being that is true is not coming and going, that there is something here that is aware of all the comings and goings, that is independent and free of the comings and goings. And this is the key, that you, in your true nature, your true essence nature, are ever free and have ever been free, that you have never been bound, you have never been that one that the story believes itself to be. This is what is important, is that you never have been that. You have always been this being that is free. And the recognition of this brings the remembering of freedom. And the recognition of this is here now. It is always, always here now. It is not in the future. It is not something to work for. It is not something that you have to deserve or be worthy of. It is who you are right now. It is not to believe any delusional ideas that you have to work for this. Yes, there is a readiness, but the readiness is here now. The readiness is not in the future. The readiness is not a process that the me has to follow. The readiness is being here now so fully. The readiness to be yourself. The readiness to be here so fully and to stop resisting yourself. Stop denying yourself, right? Stop giving the attention to the moving, changing. Stop believing the thoughts and simply be aware of the moving, changing. The content of the moving, changing is utterly irrelevant. It does not matter how fierce and wild it seems to the mind, right? It's just another ploy for the mind to immerse itself in more distraction and more resistance, while all the while longing for freedom, all the while longing for happiness, all the while longing only ever for yourself. That what is longed for is not out there, right? The same as beauty, the same as love, the longing that imagines it's longing for something out there, that if it could just get that the longing would be fulfilled. But the longing is the longing of the self for itself. It is God longing for God in full celebration of the glory that is. The longing, in truth, never leaves itself, right? This knowing, it never leaves itself. You have never left yourself. The knowing of the beauty, the love that you are, has never ever left the truth. It has never taken a journey. It has always been right here. You have always been yourself, have always been pure, unconditional love. And you have always been the most profound beauty that is radiant and shining. So we come now in this moment to the gentleness of openness, gentleness of openness, the openness to receive yourself. To openly receive yourself is to be open and receptive to this moment just as it is. So when we are resting here now, open and receptive to this moment just as it is, we are open and receptive to the self, to simply being. We are not denying or resisting. So there is kindness here, a gentleness, a softness here in being the openness. You see, we are not asking for the story to change. We are not asking for anything to change. We are simply opening the whole moment to include everything. And when everything is included, there is nothing to resist. There is nothing to defend. There is nothing to protect from, because the openness of this moment that is utterly inclusive is recognized to be resonating at perfect wholeness. And you meet the resonance of perfect wholeness. You meet your own innocence. You meet your own purity just by opening to your true nature as the openness, as the kind, receptive openness that is not trying to do the work, not trying to get somewhere, not trying to be this or that, not trying to be spiritual, not trying even to be present, not trying to be still. No, no need. You already are all that is. You already are the most deeply spiritual being. You are pure spirit, right? Before spirituality was corrupted with ideas. You are pure spirit. You are stillness. You are silent, pure awareness. You are simple being. You are immaculate, divine wholeness. And you are the most incredible, innocent purity. And the invitation of this moment is just to wake up and recognize who you are in truth, to look so deeply into the gaze of your own self, to look yourself in the eye and discover what I really is, to meet yourself here so fully that you are not distracted by any single thought or belief or concept or idea about this moment, that you meet yourself so fully in this moment with such openness, right? And what is discovered is the utter inclusivity of this moment. To meet yourself so fully is to recognize and remember who you are in truth, what you have always been, right? So as these words come, the resonance of recognition starts to stir and be enlivened. We could say the consciousness itself starts to consciously be alive in the recognition. This is where what is speaking and what is listening is the same. The resonance is the alive recognition of consciousness, consciously aware of itself. And it's immediate and alive right now. So to feel the aliveness of your presence, to feel the aliveness of the presence of being, the one being that we all share. And it is to know that this one being that we all share, we also share with utter divine wholeness, right? One is one is one. There is no second, right? So we are opening to a depth of resonant remembering of what we are, where there is nothing other than the simple knowing of what you are, resonating in the knowing of itself at the finest possible frequency, so that it is shining in this self-sustaining radiance that knows itself, that flows in the knowing of itself, and is living as pure life living itself. This is who you are in truth. Everything is included, right? There is no separation. What is called body, what is called mind, we come to start with to speak, you are not the body, you are not the mind, in order to recognize that the felt sense of being is independent of body and mind, is independent of any identified object of experience. The felt sense of my life is an experience that comes and goes, right? It's transient. The felt sense of world and story, it's coming and going, it's transient. We have learned to be identified with mind and body and world. So we come to the felt sense of being to recognize that consciousness is independent of mind and body and world. To recognize and remember the freedom and purity of divine wholeness, of the self, of the wide open heart that is the self. And as we come to recognize this self that is independent and free of mind consciousness, body consciousness, of world collective consciousness, we recognize the freedom of who we are in truth. We discover, rediscover our own purity and innocence, our own wholeness, and we discover the perfection of everything in the perfection of our own natural being. We discover that there is nothing to resist and that there is nothing lost in coming to know yourself. There can be so many ideas as we are opening and glimpsing and tasting reality. The mind starts to, in a way, furiously search for protection because it is afraid of what it does not know. It is afraid of the unfamiliar, and it has learned to protect and try to maintain a false sense of safety. But true safety, true security is in the unchanging. It is in the knowing of essence nature, in the knowing of yourself. And so everything that we are resisting with the mind's ideas that are fearful and doubtful and not trusting, these are old conditionings. And really, they are parts of ourself that we have to meet. If we believe the thoughts, we will stay in the cycle that belief perpetuates. But if we meet these parts of ourselves that have been conditioned to doubt and to fear and believe that safety is in things and people and experiences, if we do not meet these parts of ourselves that are resisting and denying, then we will not see through the illusion of separation fully, so that we can know the grace and glory of our own wholeness. And so every time a resistance comes, it's not a mistake, it's perfection, of course. It's the perfection of consciousness bringing forward all of its discordant patterns so they can be met. They can be met by the true warrior of the heart. They can be met in order to dissolve, so that the knowing of the being can be discovered. The deeper we come into the knowing of the being, we cannot even imagine what we once resisted and all of those thoughts and fears and doubts that we once had. Because there is never, ever a moment in the knowing of yourself of regret. There is never a moment where there is a wishing that the vast infinite reality could be stuffed back into the box of the mind-body identified with itself. Never is there a moment that there is a wishing that it could all go back. Maybe in the unfolding, there are moments where the mind will come forward with these ideas of wishing it never got on the jolly old bus that's carrying you into yourself, right? Of course, the mind, when it is fearful and resistant, it starts to wish, it starts to have ideas, but they are never grounded in any truth. They are just resistance, just fears and doubts coming forward. And so it is to meet it all with such utter kindness, so that everything that is playing as resistance can be seen through, seen for what it is, and welcomed into this moment here now, so that everything can be welcomed. Where there is no denial, where there is no pushing away, no suppression, no resistance, this moment is full and open, right? It is to recognize that the felt sense of being, this moment, the openness, the open receptivity, it is not resisting anything. It is totally welcoming of everything that is here, because it knows that it is independent and free of things. There is a knowing in the being of the freedom that is true and omnipresent, the freedom that is infinite and unbounded, the freedom that you are. It's right here. It is right now, this moment. It cannot be grasped or held onto. It is ever fresh and ever alive. So in this alive presence, we are meeting the aliveness of our own conscious presence. We are meeting the incredible beauty of our own consciousness that is recognizing itself and alive and awake to itself naturally, right? So we're not looking for another experience. We are just recognizing what is already here, alive and awake and free and clear. It is the being knowing itself, loving itself, and relishing the beauty of itself without looking externally, without projecting anywhere, right here in the innermost in of your being. Hear the beauty, hear the love, hear the knowing of yourself, simply, simply being. Such beauty Such beauty we are. Such beauty is. When we stop projecting outwardly the beauty, the love, the divinity, the perfection, when we stop projecting it outwards, we come to meet this incredible purity of what we are right here. We discover the beauty that we are, the love that we are, the radiant divinity that we are. We stop fearing our own perfection, because the taste of perfection is right here in the felt sense of being yourself. It is the essence nature, utter perfection and total inclusivity. So you see, resistance is futile, because what is resisted is just a part of the whole. What is being protected from, it's all part of the whole. Everything belongs here equally. Nothing is outside of divine wholeness. Nothing is outside of God. So to come to know God, to know Ma, we have to open to everything, so that everything can see itself in the light. Everything can see itself consciously aware of itself and seen in the light. This is the refinement, is resonance meeting resonance, right? So the deeper that we are living, the resonance of what we are meets the discordant resonance and allows the discordant resonance, which is slightly denser, to remember and merge into the finer frequency. So this is what is happening as mind consciousness merges into universal cosmic consciousness. Body consciousness merges into cosmic consciousness. So we come to recognize that in truth, mind and body are cosmic, are universal. Mind is a universal mind. Body is a universal body. And we can take this even deeper to know that mind is the mind of God. Body is the body of God, right? So as we come to know the oneness, everything is included. So we have to come deeper than the first initial pull away from mind body to recognize the cosmic nature of mind body, so that mind and body are completely included, and that we are not denying or pushing away an integral part of God's being, right? That all that we are is utterly included in this moment here now. That all that we are is utterly included and is able to recalibrate and refine. It is able to be cultured, right? So the brain and the nervous system gets cultured and refined so that it can receive finer and finer frequencies of intelligence, so that the divine perfection can live right here on the surface of life. And so then what is happening? We are transforming, transmuting world into God, right? In our lived experience, right? So remember, there's nothing out there. World out there is our own internal world, right? We are creating it. We are creating it all. There's nothing out there that is separate. It's all about our perception and the perspective of seeing. So as we shift our perspective of seeing to finer and finer resonances and frequencies of the self, our perception also refines. And so then what is mind and body is recognized to be cosmic, universal, and utterly divine. And what is seen to be world out there is shifted to the perception shifts and the perspective shifts to be known that everything is God, everything is Ma, everything is the same one. And the process of unfolding to the unified field really is a process of weaving everything back into unified remembering, divine remembering. It's about weaving all of the threads back into a depth of remembering, but not a conceptual remembering. It's not about conceptual understanding. It's about, let's say, the intellect awakening to let go into the flow of universal divine intelligence. So then the flow of intelligence is taking over the weaving, right? The weaving, right? We don't have to be the weaver, nothing to do, no weaving to do. We just flow as life, and then naturally the weaving happens. We rest as open receptivity, and the weaving happens naturally. The divine orchestration is that life living itself is weaving all of the threads of its disparate self into the remembering of wholeness. And it's moving in this incredibly fluid way through the lived experience of every being. So every being is the one, right? Is the same one. We have these seemingly unique and individual experiences, but the intelligence of that is all one. It's all one flow, one life living itself. So we start to open to being the being. We recognize the independence, the freedom of being the wide open, infinite field of silent awareness, of stillness, of presence. We open to being the being. And this remembering is in the innermost being itself. And this is the resonance, the recognition, the knowing that is alive, right? So as these words come, where what is speaking and what is listening is the same, is in the knowing, it's in the aliveness, right? So there's nothing to understand with the mind, but you can feel the sameness, that what is speaking and what is listening, it is your own voice, right? It's your own heart, your own self speaking to itself, bringing a remembering. It's enlivening the field of remembering. And this is the smriti, it's the field of alive remembering, consciousness alive in the remembering of itself, knowing itself. It's dancing, it's alive, and it's felt in your direct experience because you are made of this intelligence. You are made of this alive consciousness that knows itself. So as these words come, the speaking enlivens, let's say, the listening, the resonance is recognized. The speaking is the alive frequency. And then in each being, we're all made of the same. The resonance of aliveness, it starts to recognize itself. So what is listening starts to perk up and recognize and feel more alive and more sparky in the resonance. It starts to recognize this is known, right? It's familiar. And it's in the resonance, in the frequency, that there's a knowing, a recognition. And this is the intelligence, the field of intelligence, right? It's the field of intelligence that's an infinite field of intelligence that is the being, right? It's silent, it's still, it's peaceful and infinite. But as it starts to know itself, it's alive in the knowing of itself. And that aliveness starts to flow as life. So we could say here, this is where the source gives rise to everything. the flow of life, is where the source gives rise to everything. And then everything surrenders itself back into its source in every moment, life living itself in perpetual surrender into itself in this moment, right? It's like a whole cycle of birthing itself and dying into itself, birthing itself, we should say sustaining itself, and then dying into itself in every moment, right? Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma. Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, right? It's constantly cycling within itself. It's the flow of life. It's the flow of life. We could say that it's the Shiva and the Shakti, 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 right? But Shiva Shakti is one, right? Shakti never leaves Shiva, and Shiva never leaves Shakti. It's absolutely one. And what is the one? Shiva Shakti as one is divine wholeness. We can call that Ma. It can be called Shiva with a big S. It can be called all sorts. It can be called the Lord. It can be called Divine Mother. It can be called God. It's not really called anything. It's divine wholeness. It just is. It is just what is. It is the one with no second. It could be called Brahman. It could be called Parabrahman as it refines into itself. The words don't matter, but as we say the words, the field enlivens and it recognizes certain frequencies more than others, right? So as the words come, a frequency of recognition opens in the field of intelligence. You start to recognize yourself. We could say in the words, but the words are coded. This is what transmission is in a way. It's a coded resonance of your very own self. It's not someone giving a transmission to someone else. No, it is the living flow of life transmitting the aliveness of life into itself, dancing with itself, dancing with itself. God, dancing with God, dancing with God. Ma, dancing with Ma, blossoming out of her own heart, emerging and revealing her beauty, and then dying, withering into herself, right? Manifesting, and then coming back into the unmanifest, creation, and then coming back, surrendering into being the uncreated, right? It's all simultaneously happening, and the words don't matter. It's absolutely not understandable by the mind, but knowledge of the self is knowledge, and pure knowledge is intelligence. Pure knowledge is the self knowing itself, and it is alive in the intelligent knowing of itself. And it feels the resonance of its own intelligence, right? This is not an understanding. These words are not a theory. They're not a teaching. This is the living Ved that just is moving and reverberating and flowing within itself. It's the totality. It's the totality. It's all that is flowing within itself. And here's the gorgeousness, is that the human being is made up of the totality. We are the only species that has all of the resonances of totality. And that is why a human life is so valuable. A human life is so valuable because it is a consciousness that resonates with totality. It has the possibility of recognizing itself in the field of divine intelligence totally. It can totally awaken to its fullness, right? So in a way, We could say that as the human life, the human consciousness. Of course, the human is always divine. The human expression is always divine. So it's the divine that creates this flow of life and the flow of consciousness, so that that consciousness can consciously awaken and remember itself, so that it can evolve and be the vehicle for the divine to dance on the surface of life, for light to illuminate the surface of life, to transmute and transform what we could say is the world, right? But we're creating the world through our own consciousness, right? So the collective is every being's internal world dancing together as a big holy mess, right? So if our own inner worlds get a good cleanup, right, it has this possibility of uplifting the whole collective. Now, not every being in the collective has to come to this. There are figures that get spoken of that 10%, it takes 10%. I think Maharishi Mahesh Yogi came up with that through his scientific explorations. But let's not rest in ideas, but let's feel the resonance. Let's feel the resonance, because that's where that came from. It came from this alive resonance that particular being, when embodied, was exploring this, right? So we don't care what it takes. Let's be part of it. Let's flow with it. Let's be the intelligence that is the open field of intelligence that is cleaning itself up, evolving, and the consciousness that's knowing itself. And when, in a way, our individual experience, let's say our perspective of seeing shifts from separation and illusion to one of wholeness, and it keeps deepening into refined layers, because we have the possibility of opening to the totality of consciousness, opening to its totality to come to Brahman, to come to divinity, because this is possible, because the intelligence that creates human is divine, it's divinity dancing as human. Because this intelligence has this possibility, we want to use this human life to recognize the natural potential of this human life, is to recognize the divinity that we are, and that we're not the human, we're not the condition, right? So there's this incredible possibility, and we're speaking of it right here in this moment. We're speaking of it, right? The intelligence of this field that we are is speaking to itself of this incredible potential of this human life, is to know and resonate at the resonant frequency of divinity, and the finer and finer frequency that we resonate at, we uplift the collective, right? We have to, in a way, come to know the deepest truth of who we are. Of course, we have to come to the consciousness to refine the consciousness. So there's a part of this process that as we're refining, as we're opening, as we're openly receptive, we are openly receptive, and we're, let's say, very sensitive. So we can feel everything more and more, and we can feel a little bit beaten up and bashed around by the wildness that the collective is generally operating at a fairly low frequency, let's say, a fairly dense frequency. That frequency is ignorance, it's separation, right? So we don't want to collaborate with separation. We want to come to be the living resonance of being, be the living knowing, be the flow of life that is uplifting itself and flowing as itself. And we want to do the work that we are here to do, to uplift and shift our perspective and our perception We want to open to the field of intelligence too, so that we can really be of use, so that this human life is really of use. And what happens is we open more and more to our divinity, the one divinity. We open first to the being, the one being, the same one being that we are, the same being that is God's being, as the divine being. We open to this, and then we just refine and refine as we open to the flow of being the flow of intelligence, right? The self knowing itself, flowing within itself, right? So as these words come, notice how there's an understanding, that there's a way that there's an understanding, there's a recognition, that there's a simple way that it makes sense. It can almost feel like, wow, yeah, okay, that's what's happening. I get it, right? The incredible part is that your mind is not getting it. Your mind has already merged right now into the cosmic mind. Your mind is merged with the universal mind. And that is the universal cosmic consciousness, right? And this is the field of intelligence. So the sense of getting it, we could even say true understanding, is the resonance of the intelligent field, knowing itself. So there's this incredible profundity to what we are here for. There's this incredible profundity to what we are opening to. We are resting in the deep knowing of the source, essence, nature of the self. And here in the knowing of the source of all, we are the alive knowing that flows as life and arises as all that is. And depending on the perspective and the refinement of perception, how we see this and how we flow in it will have a unique flow. But what it is to recognize here now is the natural potential of every human, is that the intelligence that is the human life, what we are made of, is the same intelligence that is pure divinity, the totality, divine wholeness. We are made of that totality. We are all of it, right? We haven't got anything missing. And because of this, we have the intelligence in our natural being to really open all the way through to know this divinity that we are all the way through, and to resonate this divinity, this light frequency on the surface of life through the lived experience, where it looks like body, but body is divine body. First of all, cosmic body, and then divine light body. Mind that feels to be in separation opens to cosmic mind, opens to the pure divinity, right? The brain is getting recalibrated, it's getting rewired and restructured. The nervous system is getting recalibrated and cultured and restructured. This is happening as a natural flow of intelligence, right? So that we can receive and be one with the finer and finer frequencies of the totality of Ma. What is Ma? Ma is the finest frequency of divine light. Ma. Ma. Right? Just to feel the frequency of Ma. That our service, our true service, is to hold this frequency, to allow this frequency to open through us. We allow the Om to open through us, and then we allow the Ma to open through us, right? We're opening for openness to open through us. We're allowing all that we are to awaken to itself through the lived experience, right? So that mind and body is this singing, ringing, glimmering, shimmering field of intelligence, that the brain is not my little old brain. It's this singing, sparkling, quantum, mechanical, inexplicable functioning of divinity, right? What is the nervous system? The nervous system that starts off as my nervous system, a little bit frazzled, is the cosmic consciousness flowing within itself. So we surrender my nervous system to cosmic nervous system, the flow of consciousness coming to know itself. And as consciousness refines within itself, it starts to open to more of itself. And then it brings forward its stresses and its tightness and its contractions in order to purify and transmute and upgrade to a cosmic functioning, right? This part can be uncomfortable, right? The more that we are resting and refining, yes, there are ways for that. There are ways to support that. We're not going to go into that right now, but we will mention that the ways to support that are to nourish ourselves on every level through alignment with nature. And sadhana is supportive, is what supports the refinement, right? It doesn't carry us deeper, but it supports the nervous system and the releasing of stress. It supports the ability for the functioning of consciousness as mind and body to release stress. It supports the nervous system to release stress. So sitting, like pranayama, asana, any kind of flowing movement of the body that is energetically aligned with transformation, any kind of sitting where there's a transcendence, a resting in the being. Once you know the being, resting in the being is being the being. This is the greatest support of all, but it is supportive to move the energy through the body, through using the breath and using the allowing of the flow, right? So that's all we're going to say about that for now, but questions welcome at a later date. So we want to keep this flow moving. So this nervous system, it's bringing forward the stresses. What does consciousness do to bring forward the stresses? It creates appearances on the surface of life so that what seems like it's stressful to us are the situations that consciousness is creating the appearance of. It's all actually happening in the functioning of the brain. The brain is transmuting, is moving the consciousness, and it has the ability to create images on the screen. And the images on the screen are our own perception of what we call world and my life, right? It's all happening inside. Everyone is living in their own dream. And the magic is that we can have conversations and it seems like we're living a similar dream. But notice that there are similarities, but there's so much that's different, right? There's so much that's different. But what we really want to come to is, where are we the same? Where are we the same? What are we sharing? What is the source of all of this? Where is the being that is constant and unmoving and unchanging? Where is the peace? Where is the stable ground of presence? Where is the stillness? Where is the truth? Where is the essence, nature? This is the resonance of simple being. This is being here now. Simply being, just as you are, this moment. So everything that is speaking, everything that is coming forward, we've enlivened the flow of grace, we've enlivened the flow of life, we've enlivened the field of consciousness, recognizing and remembering itself. This enlivenment of the field and the flow of life is what supports the movement. It brings in the movement that's necessary to kind of push out that old sludge and dross. It brings the movement that is necessary for the nervous system to flow, right? So there's more of a flow and we're not stuck and stagnant. We're moving the flow of consciousness. We also want to recognize the deep, silent peace that is here, that is the source of it all. The deep, silent being that just is, the pure awareness, the pure aware being, the self, knowing itself. And here, no words, no explanation, nothing that can be described, just a felt sense of being, purely aware, pure simplicity, innocence, silence. Hear the blissful emptiness of the self knowing itself. The self knowing itself is an alive knowing. The alive knowing of being itself. Self-aware awareness. Deep silent peace. A depth of unmoving stillness. And that this is your own presence. That this is yourself. There's a resonant recognition here in the being, in the innermost being. The recognition is alive as the knowing. It is without question, because there is no question that can question it, because questions come only from the mind. Where there is no question, there is no doubt. It's the being itself, deeply resonating in the knowing of itself. And the deep resonant knowing of the self, this never changes. This never changes. As we open to the flow of life, it is the perspective of seeing that changes, and it is the refinement of perception that brings a greater intelligence. The peace and stillness and simplicity of being. The felt sense, the deep knowing, the innermost being, just silently singing in the knowing of itself. Such a depth of silence. There is no opposite here. The deep source, knowing, the stillness, the stop. Hmm. And it is to remember that if the eyes have been closed the whole time, that at some point when it feels right, to allow the eyes to slowly open, that it is very beautiful to go between eyes closed and eyes open, so that there can be a depth of absorption in the being that is true, right? So when the eyes are closed, it is easy to fall into an experience of transcendence where the person is still present and experiencing, having a transcendent experience. And then the felt sense is when the eyes open, that the person comes back from the experience. When the eyes come to openness and there's a deep resting in the moments of the slow opening of the eyes, it is to allow the gaze to stay very deeply inward so that there is a soft focus. Let's say that the gaze is right at the edge of the full peripheral vision, and there's just an open receiving of the visual landscape, a recognition that there is a visual landscape, but not looking at anything, not grasping outwards in any way, openly receiving. And this really allows there to be a shift out of personhood and out of experience to being the transcendent field, being the being, that it's not dependent upon eyes closed, eyes open, that being the being is not an experience. Being the being is the end of experience. Being the being is being yourself. And the recognition that this knowing of the being, being itself, does not come and go. It does not change. It's a permanent shift in perspective. It's the big life changer, the shift in perspective, where this knowing is so deeply rooted that it cannot go anywhere. It cannot be taken away. It's not that the play of life does not continue to play out, but the knowing of the being, the knowing is so deep that there is no separation, and that what you are is the being, that you are the open field, you are the infinite, eternal being, that you are timeless, that you are not limited in any way to being a mind body. And you can feel the felt sense of the independent knowing that is freedom. You're not someone that is free, you are freedom itself, right? It is the end of the experience of someone and the opening into being freedom, being stillness, that you are the silence. You're not someone that is experiencing silence or presence. You are silence. Your nature is silent being. This is the essential nature of all beings. It is what every being is longing for, is to know this truth without question, to shift into a depth of remembering where the perspective of seeing shifts from being a me that is looking outwards at the world and experiencing to being the vast open space in which world is happening. That you are the infinite space. You are the field of being. You are the whole transcendent field. So then no longer the need to create a transcendent experience, because you are the transcendent field. And the knowing is that this is what you are. There's still, particularly to start with, there's still the little mind that's thinking. There's still the mind that's thinking to start with. And it starts thinking, whoa, what am I? Where am I? But the felt sense of what you are is so vast that you cannot find yourself. It's the end of the game of hide and seek. You cannot find yourself. You're gone. Personhood is gone. Separation is gone. The knowing is so deep that the illusion is gone. The divine play goes on. The divine play goes on and veils come in. Maya still plays. But the anchored, rooted knowing of what you are, that is without question. And in perfect timing does this open, right? So we taste and we taste and we taste. We are bushwhacking through the jungle. And at some point, we fall all the way through. It does not matter where we are. We cannot strive or try or effort. It is pure grace. It is pure grace. But we can be available to grace. It is also pure grace that we shift deeper and into deeper and deeper perspectives. But the deeper and deeper perspectives are all happening within consciousness itself, right? We shift from personhood to being the consciousness, knowing, and then we shift as the consciousness into deeper and finer values. We are refined and refined within consciousness itself, opening to finer and finer frequencies, finer and finer resonances of divine light. And here we are being recalibrated and restructured. So the peace, the unquestionable peace and silence of being, and the aliveness of the silence in the recognition of being that silence, being the being, knowing itself. Hear the holiness, hear true sacredness, hear the taste of wholeness, hear the happiness, hear the joy, hear the awe, the wonder, hear the innocence, and hear the beauty, right? Hear the love. Hear all that has been imagined to be out there. Here it is, and you are it. That beauty is not out there. That beauty is in here. That beauty is what you are. And where we see that beauty out there, it is but a reflection of yourself. You see, the more that you know yourself, the more beauty is seen, reflected. It is the song of your own knowing shining back at you. The beauty, the love, the happiness, all of it. It is the true essence nature singing to itself. And you are that self right now. Everything that is longed for is here. It is not out there. There is no out there. It's all in here. We are all here together, in here, in the innermost being, We are here in the vast, open, timeless field of silent being, and we are here in the gracious flow of divine life, living itself. We are here together. We are here in the resonance, in the knowing, in the shining, in the intelligence. We are here in the oneness, and we have never left this home, this divine home. Mm. 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 This moment, surrendering into itself, simply being, surrendering into itself, being here now. Mm. 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 To so fully look yourself in the eye, to be so fully present with yourself, so as to see yourself in the light of who you truly are, to see your own shining glory, to turn every single thread of attention to yourself here now. Clear vision is to see yourself in the light, in the glory of true essence nature. Mm. 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 To face yourself. Mm. See the beauty, see the love that you are.